Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of our wholesale workshop. I hope you guys all found that yesterday Brent's presentation was amazing and gave you a great insight of how you can write more with the wholesale. So if you guys have any other questions in regard, Brent's on with us for a little while now. You can chat in your questions or raise your hand. Brent has to leave here in a little bit for a previous appointment. So he's with us for a little bit now so he can answer any questions. So please use the little chat or raise your hand so we can keep this interactive. So we completed our day 1. Now we're on day 2. Where can we get help with issuing the business? So we're really excited to have back with us Andrew and Jenna to go through how NBS can help you for your agency. And then don't forget to register for Live with Laura, where I'm going to show you guys how to do marketing submissions, certificates of insurance, entering those policies into Epic. So that's on May 24th, and you can register for that at ASNOA.com under the ASNOA University landing page, or you'll see it in the upcoming ASNOA Advantage and also our Education Roundup. Oops, here we go. So day 2, here we go with Andrew and Jenna. They are going to give us everything NBS related. So what I'm going to do, Andrew, is welcome you. And I know you gave everybody a little bit of introduction about yourself yesterday. If there's anything more that you wanted to add in, please go ahead, and then you can go ahead and share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. So introduction yesterday, nothing has changed with my past. No new news has come to light, so we'll just stick with what we have there. What I will throw out to the group is I am the relationship manager for NBS and ASNOA. So things that come up with agency appointments, markets, anything along those lines. While I may not be the person that actually resolves the issue, I can get you connected to the right team, the right individual along the lines. Jenna, who we also met yesterday, is my right hand, my left hand, and really the brains behind our operation. She is able to really resolve anything from a website issue, questions on where to find things, but also really being able to tell the NBS story and, again, get you connected to the right resource in the organization. We always kind of talk that NBS can be a little complex because we have a lot of capabilities that we offer. What we want to stress to our agencies is you do not need to be an expert in all things NBS to be successful with us or to write revenue or drive new revenue into your agency. When in doubt, give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll help you navigate things. We kind of joke internally that we are a building with many doors, and you can really come in any door of our operation and we'll get you where you need to be. Today, we'll dive into a lot of the commercial stuff that we do, and we'll also touch on some of the other arenas that we have within NBS. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this party started. So,
all right, sounds good.
All right, so I want to start this. And we're going to share.
Do you see where to share your screen?
Yeah, for some reason, my share just disappeared, and now it looks like we are.
There you go.
Back on top. So awesome. Yes. Okay, great. Here we go. Let's see here. We are excited to have you guys here with us today. And we've got this scheduled for 90 minutes. I promise I am going to not take up 90 minutes of your day. I'd really like to think that we're going to run through material here in probably about 30 to 45 minutes and give you time to ask questions along the way. That said, you don't have to wait to the end to ask your question. As Laura indicated, throw them in the chat, and either Brent or Jenna will be keeping an eye on those and trying to answer some of the things on the fly. And if it's a real big question or something rather technical, then Laura can take you off mute and we can talk through it. So trying to keep this as conversational as possible, keep it at a high level, and make sure that we get you information and resources you need so it all makes sense to you at the end of the day. So where are we going here? So let's start off with, we'll talk a little bit about NBS, who we are, how we fit within the nationwide framework, and really some of our capabilities. Best way to think of this is that 30,000-foot overview. From there, we're going to dive into our commercial lines. We'll talk really kind of that overview, and then we will get very specific on some of the offerings we have. And when I say specific on offerings, I'm really talking about product verticals. We won't spend a lot of time today talking about individual markets and their individual appetites, really because they vary from state to state. And I'm pretty sure I could drive you out of the webinar and get you to lose interest pretty quick when we start talking about the minutia there. As I mentioned, we will talk a little bit about personal lines. I won't spend a tremendous amount of time here because really ASNOA has a strong personal lines platform of their own. We'll touch on just how NBS can maybe plug some gaps along the way and help you guys out. We'll talk a little bit about our contacts. We do have some agency guides that will steer you towards the right people, the right teams. I will make those available to Laura, and then she can get those out to your group. And then finally, we will talk a little bit about the resources that we have available to help you get a better understanding of NBS and what we can do. So with that said, who is Nationwide Brokerage Solutions? It's important to know we are wholly owned by Nationwide. Why that makes that a little bit unique is we maintain a separate existence from the Nationwide P&C platform and really Nationwide Financial. You know, we go as so far as to maintain our own profit and loss statements. And you say, well, wow, big organization, why would you do that? Really, it's because NBS represents outside carriers. We do business with Nationwide's competitors, and to maintain antitrust laws and keep carriers or companies from sharing confidential information, we have to be kind of outside the bubble of the Nationwide enterprise. So you think about, okay, so NBS, Brent alluded to yesterday a little bit of our history. Today we are Nationwide Brokerage Solutions, but that is really a product of the insurance intermediaries that service Nationwide exclusive agents back in the day, and Allied General Agency that serviced or supported the independent channel. So we are a wholesale insurance brokerage. We can trace our origins back to 1975, so it's not like we just started up, not like we just got going with it. The original intent behind insurance intermediaries and now NBS was really to drive revenue back into the exclusive channel Nationwide agent. You know, you think about a Nationwide agent that could only represent Nationwide. Well, they were going to be stuck if a client came in with a risk that Nationwide either couldn't or didn't want to write. One example we turn to would be a family has a home and an auto, life insurance policy, throw in an umbrella, but they bought a cabin in Southern Ohio where it's protection class 9 or maybe even protection class 10, completely unprotected. Nationwide is typically not a strong market for unprotected properties and would have said, sorry, we'll take everything in the household except the cabin. Well, that then opens the door for the client to have to go to another agency, and the other agency will place that unprotected property and then generally be able to come in and try to take the rest of the account away. So NBS was really created to plug that gap. So while the original intent was to support exclusive channel agencies, Nationwide now is an independent channel only company. And as such, NBS's DNA has changed a little bit to now really focus on supporting independent agencies like yourselves write new business. So Where we're located, we've got the main office in Columbus, Ohio. The pandemic has really changed a lot of things, not just at NBS, but nationwide overall. And many of our associates are now work from home and will not be coming back into a brick and mortar office. So it's fair to say office based in Columbus, but we have a lot of associates working from home, predominantly in Ohio and Iowa. For those agencies that are further west in Mountain Time and Pacific Time, we do stretch our hours to try to be able to support those agencies. But if you're calling at 4:30 Pacific Time, it still might be tough to get a hold of somebody. In those cases, we'll do what we can to help you out. So the solutions we offer. We've got four main verticals here at Nationwide to talk about. One is direct market access, and I'm going to throw a huge asterisk behind this. While this is a capability that NBS offers, both on the personal and commercial line side, this is a very delicate area for our ASNOA relationship, because we represent a lot of companies that ASNOA already has a relationship with. And so it makes no sense for your agency to try to access these markets through NBS when you already have access to them. I will try to say this as many times today as possible, and that is, if use your markets first, think of NBS as kind of that backstop or a gap filler for you. There are some direct access markets where they are NBS only, and we could add some value. It's critical that you talk to your leadership team at ASNOA if it makes sense for you to get signed up with any of the direct market access carriers that we have. I don't want to dwell too much on that, but it is an area that it's not wide open and do whatever you want. It's really geared towards being able to provide the right tools for your agency without distracting you from kind of that main mission there. The second vertical that we offer is a wholesale brokerage. And Brent talked a lot about that wholesale environment yesterday. And this can be everything from the really hard to place vanilla account. And what I mean by that is it's a startup contractor. This is something that, a lot of companies would like the contractor, but the fact they're brand new might be a bit of an issue. And so you got to turn to a wholesaler to try to help you get that business placed. The general agency side of things, where we will maintain binding authority with a handful of carriers, where we do the underwriting on their behalf. Brent talked a little bit yesterday about having the pen or having binding authority, where we underwrite the account and periodically the carrier comes in and audits to make sure, are we following the rules? Are we issuing the right forms and charging the right premiums and whatnot? It's one of the things that we do. I would say it's not half or really even 25% of our operations, but it is a sizable piece of what we've got. Finally, we do have a proprietary E&O program for property casualty agents. When Brent mentioned yesterday about program managers, where they have a unique product that is only theirs to sell or only theirs to distribute, we have one of those products in the form of E&O. So the E&O product, to give you a little bit of history on it, it was really designed for those nationwide agents. Well, now that they've gone independent, we've had to rebuild some of the structure of the E&O program to make it fit. But again, it's out there that if you're ever shopping E&O, we could definitely give you a rate on that and show you what we could do there. So with that said, the last bullet point I'll make that's not on here is, think of NBS as a gap filler. If you have a market that can write an account or that has interest in it, you're better going that avenue than to come through NBS. Not a typical sales pitch that you'll hear from an organization, but really our mission is to help you write new business and do it in a way that's the most efficient for you and that can give you the greatest degree of revenue. So before we jump on to the next slide, do we have any questions or anything like that from the group?
We do have a question from Kathy in the chat, and she said, who do we talk to about carriers we should or should not try to get appointed with in NBS direct market access carriers? So I think I'm going to say that you are asking what carriers that ASNOA has that you want to use, that you don't want to use directly through NBS. Is that correct, Kathy? So you would talk to agency services in regards to that at ASNOA. So it's agency services at asnoa.com.
And on our website, what'll happen is you will see a button that'll say direct access or direct markets personal lines, direct markets commercial lines. You will make sure that you select your state, and then you would see every company that we offer in that state that would consider a direct or a sub-direct appointment. And that's where you could compare that list against the list that you would have with ASNOA. So as Laura pointed out, using your agency services to help navigate that, there are instances where, yeah, it makes sense to look at that sub-direct appointment. And then there are many cases where ASNOA already has that option or has even better options available to them. And so before you sign up for anything, definitely talk to your support team there.
Absolutely.
I'll just jump in. This is Brent. You know, I mentioned this a little bit yesterday when we were kind of looking at that spectrum of where NBS falls on the retail side and acts somewhat like a network. But understand that most of our direct access markets, which you'll see when you get into the website on both commercial and personal lines, are in the space where that is the way the carrier chooses to go through to distribution through a wholesaler, get to their portal and direct access situation with them and use it. But saying that, we do have a few out there, like, you know, I'll just say the names. We have the ability to work with Travelers in personal lines, for example, on Safeco. It's mainly a few national carriers. So it's not a lot. As I mentioned yesterday, your network and your regions are going to have not only national carriers, you're probably also having access to a lot of regional carriers. When you think about all the carriers that are in the Midwest, you know, the West Bends, the auto owners, state autos, things like that, you might have a lot more from that regional standpoint. So it's mainly national. And as Andrew mentioned, it was designed to sort of help the exclusive channel agent. And it still lives and breathes today in a form of availability, but where we'll see some singular retail agents that just maybe need an extra carrier or two to help round out their already stock of carriers. And that's where they may jump to us. But like Andrew said, it'll be pretty obvious when you see the page which ones you'll know you already have access to. So but I just wanted to jump in. There's a lot of them out there that also deal in, you know, brokerage only access. So you'll see when they get to it. But anyway, thanks. That was a great question.
Thanks, Brent. We have another question here in regards to home health care. Does NBS have access to the markets?
To home healthcare markets, it's going to really depend upon what level of home healthcare we're talking about. I could speculate and say, yeah, I feel pretty confident that from the personal assistant or just kind of an errand runner up to, you know, someone doing a little bit of like cooking and cleaning and whatnot, we would have markets for those. To go beyond that, I would feel much more confident in my answer if I had a broker that could tell me, oh yes, we do that with a regular degree, or no, we just don't have a market. The best thing to do would be to give us a call and talk to a commercial lines broker. We'll show you how to get to those folks here in a little bit with the call-in number, and they could get that question answered for you probably right there on the fly.
That's great. Thank you. All right. I think that's all the questions we have for right now.
Okay, great. Okay, so we talked about 4 verticals. I'm the type of person that you can talk all day long. I want to see how this lays out. This is probably one of my favorite slides, and I can't take credit for building it. We had to explain to a consultant what we do, and they were struggling with it, and they sketched this out and said, does this fit? And it was like, yeah, actually this does. And it's really good because it flows kind of in that linear fashion. When you think about Brent's presentation yesterday, and he had the entire insurance ecosystem on that spectrum where personal lines started at the far left and all the way at the far right. He was talking about Lloyd's of London and insuring a baseball player's arm from injury. This spectrum really kind of condenses down for NBS. So what I want to show you here is really kind of highlight a few things. So we talked about the direct appointment, and that's that direct access piece that we just touched on, where talk to ASNOA leadership or your support team first before you do anything along those lines. As we move across the page from left to right, now you get into this direct access point. Some of the direct access carriers, one that comes to mind is American Modern. You guys have a relationship directly with American Modern, so it doesn't make any sense to come to NBS to get that product because you can get there yourself. Other companies like Hiscox or Byberg would be ones that maybe we have that you don't. Next Insurance could be another one where it might make sense to authorize that just subdirect appointment so that you can get in there. So when we think about that direct access space, you say, okay, well, what would we find inside that vertical? And the standard personal lines, again, you guys have a great network of carriers for that. So just kind of cross that one out of your mind. But then you get into the small commercial. You get into some non-standard auto, flood, quake products. But then you get into kind of that specialty property where coastal, dwelling, fire. Here's where we start to blur the line between personal and commercial, because you might have someone that owns a rental property that gets attached to a homeowner, clearly a personal lines account. You could get into situations where somebody owns multiple rental properties and a personal lines carrier doesn't have the interest or the capacity to take that on, and they want to go down a dwelling fire path, but do it on a commercial form. You can get into all kinds of other specialty areas there, but again, it's one of these things that we can help plug that gap. As we move across the page further, the main vertical that we offer at NBS would be our brokerage. And I want you to think of this as just an access solutions to harder to place risks. This is where you start to get people involved, where you're going to talk to one of our brokers who's going to try to help underwrite the account, get it really packaged up to present to a carrier for help. It's going to be a little more transactional, a little more hand-holding. We might have you utilize one of our technology platforms to get that process started, to get some apps uploaded. In other areas, it just might be really a consultation conversation to help frame those things up. When we think about what would you find in that area, you start thinking about this, again, standard personal lines, small commercial lines, but there's going to be that caveat to it. There's something with that account that keeps it from being highly transactional, untouched by people and flowing. Things like claims history. Maybe there's something unusual about the account that makes it pop out of the flow. My example of the flower shop that also opens a bakery in the back end of it could be something that someone would say, we just need to talk about this first to see if this makes sense. On the personal line side, you'll see the private client carriers located here. Nationwide Private Client, AIG, Chubb would show up there. But for today's conversation, here's where you start to see that standard commercial lines from the relatively small all the way up to those larger middle market type accounts. Because of the complexity of those, we get people involved, which really turns it into a brokerage account. And then finally, within the brokerage realm, you would find things like specialty, the professional, the cyber that Brent talked about, the dreaded EPLI insurance and all of the crime coverages and all of those things that kind of fit into the specialty arena. That's where you would find those. In the last vertical, we have our general agency group where we talked about having binding authority or having the pen for a surplus lines or a non-admitted carrier. So we're going to act as the underwriter. We're going to make sure that it fits guidelines. We're going to take care of all of that stuff. The surplus lines, taxes and fees that Brent mentioned yesterday, those fall on our shoulders, and we'll take care of all of that stuff. And so again, that is traditional excess and surplus lines binding. So you might be asking yourself, how do I know which vertical these go into? Is this account that I have in front of me going to be in excess and surplus lines, or can it be a standard lines account? I'm not sure. Here's where all we say is give us a call or send in the account. Send it to NBS New Business. Strike that. I'm not sure about that email address. As soon as I said it, I wasn't quite sure. But we have the inbound inbox. You can send the application. We'll evaluate it and get it to the right spot. If you want to talk through it, give us a call. We will help steer that account and get it where it needs to be quickly. And we're willing to spend the time with you on the phone to explain why it may be a general agency vertical or why it may have to go to the brokerage side of things. Again, we can cover a pretty wide swath, and we don't expect you to understand or to know where to necessarily go with anything along those lines. So that said, let's turn off the laser pointer here.
All right, real quick, Andrew. Eric wants to know if he will receive a copy of this or to go directly to the website.
Help me understand the question. A copy of the...
So are you looking, Eric, for a copy of the presentation here? I can unmute you. All right, Eric, I just unmuted you.
Basically, the vertical sheet, the sheet that you have right here.
Yeah, I can definitely send you a copy of that. It might, I tell you what, we can send you a copy of this and get you the contact sheet so you can kind of match up some of the names, or like when you call into our 800 number and you're going to go to the commercial lines department, and then you've got a few options there. That might help you navigate the phone tree a little easier, but we've tried to flatten that out as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I was just looking for the easiest path to getting to the right place. That's all.
Certainly. Eric, I'll throw out there that when you call in to our 800 number, the phone tree is rather flat. You know, you got options for personal lines or commercial lines. Whoever you speak to, even if you wound up in the wrong spot and you tell them what you're after, they'll get you over to the right team, the right group of people. And again, because of our complexity, to really be a great or be effective within our environment, you kind of got to know what your other departments are doing or what your peer teams do. And so that when somebody winds up on your phone, we get you where you need to be if it's the wrong spot.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, and Brent just put the email address in the chat. And Ed, by Live with Laura on the 24th, keep an eye out for our Education Roundup newsletter and also the ASNOA Advantage newsletter. In there, we'll have all of the information for our upcoming webinars as well. And we have another question here from Chin. Will we be receiving contact numbers? Yes, absolutely. You will get a copy of that. And Heather, I'm unmuting you if you would like to ask your question.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so in calling the 1-800 number, I'll tell you that one of my biggest obstacles as a commercial only agent is that there are certain things that I know they have to go surplus. But then there are some things that not every business is exactly the same, right? So one business is going to be janitorial and they're going to be doing this thing, and then a different one's going to be this janitorial, but they're doing something different that maybe the admitted market doesn't like. In calling the 1-800 number, if it's not something that's a fit, will they direct us and say, oh, well, this doesn't fit here, but I may have someone else who can help you and direct us to the brokerage portion of it?
Yep, that's how it's designed on paper. Now, the minute I say that, somebody can go, that isn't how it worked for me yesterday. But the way that our commercial lines department is set up, when we say verticals, they're really integrated closely with one another. That if the brokerage side has an account that they just don't have a market that'll fit, they're handing that off to the general agency side and having them approach it from an excess and surplus line standpoint. What we do see sometimes, somebody comes in and says, I know this account is non-admitted or should be written with an excess and surplus lines carrier. The E&S group quotes it, everybody's happy, they bind business, and the brokerage team goes, we had markets that would do that. It's, you kind of think of that flow of business that if it's not going to fit brokerage, then hopefully we can find a spot for it in the general agency group. General agency group, if they can write it, great. If it's obvious that this should be a standard lines account, they'll refer it back. But if it's in one of those kind of gray zones, they understand that speed is everything, that you're probably in the 11th hour waiting for a quote to come back. And so they'll run with it. So sometimes it's great to have a quick conversation with general agency, and they may give you the advice, this could be brokerage, and then they'll get you over to there. And then again, if you send in the apps to the email address Brent put in the chat, the team will evaluate it and ultimately get it where it needs to go as well.
Right.
Okay.
One thing I would say there, just to jump in on that Nbs submit, best thing you can do is so I'm going to put myself in your shoes as a commercial agent for ASNOA with probably a lot of admitted markets. If you've got declines, you say, you can put in that submit. This needs to go to the E&S team. I have my due diligence. Remember, we talked about yesterday where you've got declines. They're being non-renewed by company A. Nationwide won't write it. There's number 2, and Travelers isn't going to look at it either. There's company 3, and they've got some losses, whatever. That's why I need to go straight to E&S. They most likely won't complain about that, and they'll go right after that. Where Andrew's sort of talking, and what you'll see, this is where the world's getting a little fuzzy in this, like when we talk about this direct access space. You have companies out there like Next Insurance, USLI, Hiscox. They're writing a lot of GL and property BOP type policies that are in, I sort of call it that, and it's probably a terrible term, but I kind of call it the purgatory land. They're not really E&S, but they're also probably not something your really good preferred commercial underwriters are looking for either, just because they're small, new, something, maybe the class is just a little off that they're not comfortable with, but you have carriers out there still willing to do it. And that's where you either can go into our direct access page and sign up for a Next Insurance, or call the USLI number and get a phone quote with them, or sign up for the direct access Hiscox portal and check that out. Or if you didn't, like I'll put an example of maybe an agent that has very few commercial admitted markets, they might actually go into our iQuote platform and they would get quotes from our contracts with Travelers or with Liberty or whoever and see if they'll write it. If they won't, then that's where Andrew mentions our brokerage team and on the iQuote platform, because the iQuote platform is basically where we do admitted commercial outside of the direct access portals that you have access to. So that independent agent would go into iQuote, see we get all no's there, and then it flows over to the general agency to do an E&S surplus lines quote. So we kind of have this conveyor belt approach for an agent that may not have as many markets. But if you have a lot of markets, which you likely do, it's very important up front to communicate that, get your due diligence form completed so you have your declines, and we'll rock it right on over to E&S.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the reason why I say that is because I actually just had an encounter with a carrier that we do have access to. I do. And I sent them an inquiry about home health care, and I got back a really not nice response. And I actually submitted it to Nbs and thinking that I was going to get something that, I didn't have access to. And lo and behold, I got a quote back from the same carrier that I sent the email to ask them about. And I was like, well, man, that kind of stinks, because I would have liked to have gone directly to them, but I couldn't because I just literally got shut off at the gate. So that's the reason why I was asking if it's designed for that, because commercial is not easy to write and insurance is a hard market right now. It stinks.
Certainly. So Heather, that also brings up another really good point. And it's not so much, there's a big difference with our relationships with carriers than say ASNOA has with theirs. But because of our size, and a lot of times we get assigned to like a national team because we are writing in all 50 states. There is that different flavor of underwriting. I would hate to imply that we're going to get a wider appetite, better terms, better pricing, anything along those lines than you could get going direct.
Right.
But there are times where your direct relationship says, no, we're not interested. And then lo and behold, NBS is able to access the same carrier, most likely through a different underwriting team, and get a different result. When I was running underwriting at a carrier, that was a chief complaint that I want to talk to this underwriter because he says yes a lot more than this one over here. And you go, yeah, I know. We're about ready to fire the yes guy. He needs to learn how to say no a little more often.
That happens more, though, I would say. I mean, if anything, it happens more on access from a state standpoint. We've worked with partners that have been, smaller agency organizations that just don't have the breadth nationally. And so they will actually incubate with some of the admitted companies with us in the states that those national carriers just won't let them access. It's more on a state. When it comes to appetite, I would say the preferred carriers sometimes they're more strict, actually. You guys may even experience that too a little bit, just because we have a pretty wide funnel for agents to come in and get to carriers, and so they can underwrite us a little tighter on the other side of the spectrum. But when it comes to the brokerage carriers, or like the Nexts and the Hiscox, the USLIs, and that's where Andrew mentions, those carriers are really big fans of NBS because we are able to get them a lot of production. And as long as they continue to want to do business through the wholesale model, I foresee that continuing. Andrew mentioned American Modern earlier. That's an example of kind of a hybrid carrier. American Modern, they go through the brokerage distribution primarily to get to agents. However, they also recognize the value of going direct with the networks like yourself. We were at a conference a few years back with ASNOA, and we were right next door to American Modern. So that's an example of a company that goes to distribution through wholesale brokers and networks, but they very rarely will give a singular retail agent a direct contract unless they're extremely large and have the ability to really produce for them.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Okay, so let's wrap up a little bit of additional information. So first and foremost, NBS nor Nationwide have any ownership in the business you write. We're a wholesaler. What you write with us, your relationship with ASNOA covers all of that. When it comes to compensation, hopefully you all understand we pay ASNOA at the top of the house, and then they filter the commissions down through. And one of our calling cards is a competitive commission. Again, the approach that we take is our mission is not to, be this profit center for Nationwide. They expect us to be profitable. They expect us to contribute a little bit towards to the NOI factor, but at the end of the day, we're here to drive revenue back into your organizations. And so we've stretched the budget as far as we can so that we can give you guys as much as possible. Now, you may see along the bottom of the screen there just a small snippet of the carriers that we represent. Today, we've got about 225 carrier relationships out there, and that's both personal and commercial lines mixed together. But you may see carriers that you already have access to through ASNOA. This is a repeat of the reminder: use your markets first. Think of us to fill gaps. Think of NBS to be kind of that backstop for you. Again, if you have any questions about who you should or shouldn't, talk to ASNOA leadership on that. So we are here today to talk about commercial lines. And so when we think about NBS, and going back to Brent's presentation yesterday and that spectrum, our strength as an organization is really as that beginning access point for small commercial, all the way up through the very complex middle market arena. Now, I will tell you, there's many definitions of middle market out there depending on the company. Some talk about the revenue, some talk about premium, some talk about the number of employees. To us, that middle market account, it's not uncommon to see those get into the millions of dollars of premium and still be considered middle market. I've always used that premium benchmark of $50,000 is really kind of that space. We'll talk about middle market here a little bit more in a couple of seconds, but if anything, it should give you kind of that spectrum. So our core offerings, iQuote. Brent's mentioned that. If you've gone through an onboarding session with Jenna or really anybody else at NBS, you will have heard of iQuote. iQuote is our proprietary competitive rater, and we can do really a wide swath of our book through this. We can do BOPs, small packages, workers' comp. You can do some commercial auto, straight GLs, umbrellas, all of that small stuff can flow through the iQuote platform. As you build your quote through there, one of the great things is it will turn to all the markets we have available for that state and that class of business, and it'll start churning through those quotes. Where we believe this becomes a differentiator for us is as you have direct relationships with other carriers through ASNOA, you're able to add those carrier profiles to this iQuote platform. So you're not only just quoting what NBS could do, you're quoting your lineup of companies at the same time. And it'll show you premium and coverages and exclusions and really give you a good snapshot of who is aggressively going after that account. If you find that one of your direct carriers is the best option, you're able to leap from the iQuote platform and go right into that carrier, and it takes it away from NBS and allows you to transact that business to get you the most amount of revenue possible. Comparative raters have come a long way, especially on the commercial line side. There was a question yesterday about supplemental applications, and iQuote does a nice job of identifying those additional questions that carriers may need for this. At the end of the day, it's not foolproof and it's not perfect. You will get some feedback that they can't give you a rate until you answer this 2-page questionnaire, and it's got to be submitted for a rate. But this should at least get your foot in the door and let you know where things are shaping up early in that process. Another core offering is going to be that traditional excess and surplus lines, or I'll give the air quotes, non-standard commercial lines offering. In this area, though, I don't want you to think non-standard as being a subpar property or a subpar risk. This is a really wide area for us. When I say garage, dealers and auto service, that falls in this non-standard area. Tougher general liability classes, restaurants, bars, taverns, things like that could fall to this area. Liquor liability, and then you get into packages, property, inland marine, to name a few, can really drive an account towards excess and surplus lines. Now, if I can go back to the garage and dealer service end of things, this is a very tough class or a tough segment of the market right now, not from an underwriting acumen, but from a carrier availability. It's been highly unprofitable for a lot of companies, and we've seen carriers tighten up their appetites, raise rates. Some of it even gotten out of big segments of the market. If you are in that space, writing garage, dealers, whatnot, it would behoove you to give us a call and talk through those accounts before you invest a lot of time and energy in them, because sometimes there's just bad news waiting for you, the producer, at the end of a lot of work. Sometimes that fast no is better than a slow yes, and it allows you to really be nimble and focus on those high engagement areas. So In this excess and surplus lines arena, I also want to point out our ability to do phone quotes. Within E&S, an underwriter can give you an indication on the phone, usually with 4 pieces of information: class code, exposure basis, zip code, maybe a supplemental question of some kind. Because if you're working with an account today that, let's say, they're paying $5,000 in premium and your only option is to go excess and surplus lines, and that rate indication before they even really do anything to the account is north of $10,000, you could be the greatest salesperson in the world. It's tough to sell a 100% increase. You may not even want to waste your time with the account. You save the X date and you come back out and talk to them next year. Our phone quote capabilities, talk to a live person, get that indication, help you know, is this something you want to go further with? Also in the commercial lines area, we have our specialty lines. And so we talked a little bit about this before: cyber, crime, environmental, the EPLI, some of the marine, ocean marine, or blue marine cargo, it's sometimes called, professional. We can really cover a large area of classes with this. And again, a phone call, we can get you helped out. Middle market. So I promised you we'd talk about this more in a couple of minutes. So here we are. So you think about really just larger accounts that otherwise would have been a standard lines placement. I mentioned the $50,000 threshold in annual premium is really where it kind of pushes you into that middle market space. Another benchmark to look at would be the amount of revenue or the exposure basis of the account. And that's typically in that $15 million and up space. But with middle market, if you can take one thing away, it's complete applications with plenty of lead time. The middle market team, because these are complex accounts and they're going to invest a lot of time back and forth with the carriers, they need no less than 30 days. If you stumble upon a middle market account with a week to go before the X date, it's not because we don't want to, it's just there's not going to be enough time to give you a solid quote to go back and forth. Middle market is highly competitive because you think about that $50,000 account, that premium is going to get somebody out of bed every morning to go compete for those. And so you'll find a much more sophisticated competitor from an agency standpoint. The carriers that play in the middle market space are going to throw their best effort at it, and they need time to be able to do that. So as you come across good middle market accounts, again, complete applications with plenty of lead time, and we will be able to help you get your arms around those. And then finally, we talk about those subdirects. And again, we've hit this drum pretty hard. As you find markets that you think may be a fit for you, like a Next Insurance, just talk to the team at ASNOA and make sure that it fits within the whole thing. All right, so we're doing great on time here. We're at about the 45-minute mark, so this is where things will kind of pick up. We talk here about personal lines, and again, you guys have a great platform for personal lines, and there's really not a lot that NBS can bring to the table, aside from some of the specialty core offerings. So obviously, we do the standard preferred just like you. We have our brokerage specialty where now you're going to get into coastal, and here you can start to see that blurring of the line between personal lines and commercial lines. Things like the coastal property, high valued homes, clearly personal lines, but sometimes you can wander into the VRBOs, the Airbnbs. We have markets that will handle those. And traditionally, those platforms were for the single individual or the family that owns a house and they want to rent out once in a while, to now you're starting to see LLCs and corporations buy many homes and utilize that platform to go out there. People say, oh, this is an Airbnb, it's got to be personal lines. You may find that it's actually commercial. Here, our teams can pass that information back and forth. Where we thought it was personal, it could go commercial or vice versa. And then direct access, again, it's exactly what we've talked about before. If there's anything you think we can do to help, talk to your leadership team at ASNOA first before you go down any of those paths. And so now we get into some of the contacts. Again, I will have all of this information packaged up so Laura can share it with you. But that general 800 number is really as flat as we can make it. The first option, if you select number 1, you are in the commercial lines arena, and you'll see the brokerage, the E&S, the iQuote teams all being really just kind of a button push away. Personal lines to the same degree. But then over on that third column, you're going to see the support side. Our agent E&O program we put over there. And then what would you see rapid responses, really our service center, and they can address just about anything that you have out there. And then finally, resources. We have an agent guide. And what we've done here recently is instead of giving you this big, thick encyclopedia, we've broken it up into pieces. We have kind of the general NBS guide that gives you the contact information and the high level info. And then we split the rest of the guide into a personal line section and then a commercial line section. So Heather, for you being a commercial lines producer, you don't have to walk around with a bunch of personal lines info if it doesn't apply to you. We'll make sure that you guys have all 3 of those documents as well. And then the appetite guides, we do have things that will help steer you towards very specific information. Yesterday, there was a question asked about what have we done with other retail agencies. These appetite guides will really be at kind of an NBS level. What we can do for that request is really zero in on your zip code or your area and let you know what everybody's doing. And then we could probably be able to give you an ASNOA specific snapshot on those. And then realistically, for those of you on the call that may not be doing business with NBS, it's really easy to get appointed. You reach out to your service center. They will send you a DocuSign link that you complete. It comes into my support team. They will get you processed and in the system. And on the call with us today is Jenna as a party. Jenna will lead you through your onboarding. Really, it's a walk through the website, showing you the tools, where to find that carrier list, where to find the iQuote platform. Make sure you get signed up for all of the tools that you need, and really just become a general resource to your agency. And that's where, here's my pitch for kind of the next round of information related to NBS and commercial lines. And that's after Brent's presentation, after our chat today. If you want to know more or you want to go even deeper with NBS, you can set up an individual appointment with Jenna directly, one-on-one conversation that can be as high level or as in-depth as you need it to be. She'll walk you through the website, show you where to find everything, and get you connected to all of the right teams at NBS. So with that said, we have crossed the finish line here and going to open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that, Andrew. All right. Now, how can they reach out to get in contact with Jenna?
Hey, Jenna.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I was talking on mute there. Yeah, so definitely, I'm going to throw my email in the chat here, and you can take note of that. I know some of these names are familiar. So if you've already been through an onboard session with me, it would just be, a duplicate if you did again the same information. So no need to do it twice. But if you would like to, you can just send me an email, and then I will send you a link that goes to my calendar, and that will allow you to pick a time that works in your schedule. They really only take about 15-20 minutes. And I'll show you everything: website navigation, our resources, the comparative raters. So feel free to take a look at that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenna. And I'm glad that you already have had some meetings with some of the people that are on the call as well. So that's great too. And
Yes.
Thanks for adding your email into the chats. All right. Is there any other questions that you guys may have or that we haven't already answered that was in the chat for Andrew, for Jenna, for Brent? If you think of anything, go ahead and chat it in or raise your hand. And I just want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing with us, Brent, all about wholesale, and Andrew and Jenna for sharing with us what NBS can do for our agents. And you had talked a little bit about higher commissions. Did you want to talk anything more about that or add in?
Well, I think Nick and Mike might frown upon me saying, we'll just give you everything and
Right.
you guys sort through that. Yeah, it's so one of the things about NBS that it's a curse and a blessing, because we get asked a lot, what is your commission schedule? Can you give me a document that tells me what my commission is for this carrier, for this product? And the answer is no, we cannot. And the reason is we don't set a commission percentage and say we pay 10%. What we do is we look to share the percentage of the commission with our producing partners. And so in many cases, what we will do is I'll say for like a standard independent agency that's off on their own, we will give them 65% of the commission we get from the carrier on a piece of brokerage business. And so if one carrier pays 15 and the next one pays 15 and a half, they get 65% of that. And
Okay.
so, correct. And so as we work through our different verticals, obviously new business and renewal business, you'll see some fluctuation sometimes based on the line. But generally speaking, we're going to push as much of that commission back to your organization as possible.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Zach asked if there was a service fee for policies written through NBS.
So a service fee, generally, no. Now, on the excess and surplus line side, there will be a policy fee that will also factor in things like inspection fees and whatnot. We will not universally slap a fee on that small commercial standard lines policy.
Anything like true brokerage, like a brokerage specialty, it might be admitted or not admitted, but if it's going through a carrier, not on direct access, like Andrew said, if you were going to iQuote, but if it's a true brokerage policy, there's 100. It depends on the state, but it's fairly standard across the board. It's $125, which I will tell you in the brokerage world is an extremely reasonable policy fee. You see policies in some states upwards of $250, even $500. So that's one of the areas that we're able to hopefully provide some value to your customer using us as a brokerage. And on the commission side of the house, I'll just add to, you typically when you go to brokerages, it's typically a 50% split out there. Andrew mentioned 65. We're a little bit north of 50. And that helps us to be able to work with networks such as yourself to pay a little more out, because we know you guys have different structures set up yourself, and it helps us with the amount of distribution points your network brings to us. So that in the E&S binding space, like Andrew mentioned, it's around 60%, and then the true brokerage is around 65% total share. So I think that's a little above market average. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, our group likes higher commission. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. If there aren't any other questions, I am just going to reiterate, if you guys can see my screen. Yes?
Yep.
Yes, great. That wholesale override, I talked about it yesterday, and I just want to make sure that we are all aware, and that when you are issuing policies, that you receive the commission on. So as Andrew said, the commission is going to filter through ASNOA on that. So when you are writing business, join live with Laura, and I'll show you guys how to enter in NBS policies into Epic, because you do it a little bit differently. And then we'll talk about how you enter in regular commercial lines and do market submissions and certificates of insurance. So I look forward to seeing you guys all on May 24th for my next live with Laura. And just wanted to review all the great things that Andrew had told us today. Was absolutely amazing. And I think I probably should have just put big words up there, higher commissions, because we love that, and how easy it is to work with NBS. So take advantage of everything that they have to offer. You guys are going to find that it's going to be a whirlwind of a difference of working in the wholesale markets when you're working with Andrew and his team. And Jenna is amazing. We've heard amazing things about her with our other agents that are working through quoting and going through the system. So Jenna, thank you for taking great care of our agents. We greatly appreciate that.
You're
And I
welcome.
will go ahead, Brent.
Oh, sorry, Laura. I have to get off, but before I jump off, I wanted to say, if I could give any advice to how to start working with NBS, is to start with the website, have a consult with Jenna, or talk to Andrew if you get, one of us, if you get lost, and get out there on the website. And the first thing to do, in my opinion, with every agent is get to that direct access pace and find those special carriers that will help you and get signed up for them. Because once you sign up for us and sign up for the website, then you have to sign up for those carriers. So maybe you do a lot of cyber business and you need to get a portal set up with Hiscox and IFI Cyber, which is a monoline cyber direct access carrier we have. Or, Next Insurance in the commercial space possibly might fit a lot of things you write. Sign up for those direct access. Get comfortable with USLI. They have a great 1-800 phone quote ability. USLI can be sometimes confusing because they have such a good spectrum of products they write in the management line space, as well as property casualty, that sometimes people actually think they're doing business directly with NBS when really it's just our kind of concierge phone number or underwriter there at USLI taking you straight through. And all we're doing is processing the bind at the end of the day. So get familiar with those types of companies and working in our direct access space, and then kind of jump to that, next level, 200 class phase of working with our ENS brokers directly when all else fails with your direct carriers or some of our direct access carriers, and getting down, getting down and dirty with the ENS stuff. So I really appreciate everyone letting us jump on though, and I hope you guys learned something.
Well, thanks, Brent. We really appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for jumping on today. I know that I really appreciate doing these workshops to get all this information and knowledge to the agents so they can get all of that information and increase their revenue within their agency. So if you are looking for any other workshops or have ideas for that, just shoot me over an email so we can put something together for you. Our next workshop is going to be with Agency Revolution on marketing, and that's going to be June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. So you all have a great day. Thanks for jumping on. If you have any other questions, just let us know. Oh, we do have a question.
Ooh.
From Greg. Do these direct ones like Hiscox or Next download when they are through NBS? I know that was a question we had asked once before about the downloads. I don't believe so. Is that correct?
Correct. So we do have an ability to participate with the Ivans downloads, but I don't know how that necessarily relates to the ASNOA relationship, because some groups say we have to be the top of the house does the download. Other groups say, no, we don't want the policy level info. It goes directly to the agent. So your service center, your support center would have the answer to that.
Okay, we will take a look at that and let you know about those downloads with NBS. That would be a great takeaway. Absolutely. We are going to get you guys that information in regards to the downloads, because here in the education department, we are always stressing follow up on your downloads, follow up, follow up, follow up. So guess what? I'm going to follow up on that. And I will get that information to you guys all with all the material from Andrew and Brent and Jenna, and send it all out to you in an email with all the follow-up information. All right. So if there aren't any other questions, thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.